As Abraham sat under the terebinths of Mamre, recovering from having circumcised himself at age 90, God appeared to him in the form of 3 men. Abraham, even in his weakened state, rose to greet them, wash their feet, and feed them. There's a disagreement between 2 very prominent Torah commentators about the 3 men that Abraham saw and interacted with. Nachmanides argues that this entire scene is some kind of fever dream for Abraham. It is merely a vision, as these kinds of miraculous events only take place in the minds of prophets, not in actual reality. Nachmanides argues the opposite, that these visions are seen by flesh and blood eyes, and that the ability to see these visions is referred to as the uncovering of the eyes, in which the individual is granted a glimpse into another realm impinging upon our own, through what Nachmanides refers to as the garment. When Abraham bound Isaac to the altar, the ministering angels above wept, and tears dropped from their eyes into Isaac's eyes, leaving their mark upon them. And when he grew old, Isaac's eyes grew dim. The sages tell us that the trauma of Isaac's near sacrifice at the hands of his father led to his inability to see. Unlike Abraham, who had his eyes uncovered by God through their covenant, Isaac's had been covered by the tears of his trauma. Both of these moments serve as an example of the power of sight, of those things seen and unseen, and how trauma and fear can lead us to be unable to see. Whether we are blind to certain things purposefully or due to our own limitations, whether things that are not obvious or out of the ordinary are merely inventions of the imagination, these are questions central to the stories we tell ourselves about who we are. Whenever we repeat our stories and ideologies to identify ourselves, either as individuals or as groups, certain facts and figures are highlighted, while some are condemned to the ash heap of history. But when the foundation of our stories and our ideologies are trauma and fear, our eyes become dim like Isaac's to those details outside of the unimaginable horror that can overshadow all else. When we look back on the 20th century as Jews, the traumatic events are the ones that stand out, and for good reason. It's impossible to fully fathom the impact of the Holocaust, the enormity of its horror, the way in which it represents the failure of modernity's promise of a future humanity beyond savagery, the actual physical impact of so many lives lost, and the fact that we have pictures and video. We today can actually see with our very eyes the horrors of the camps. The power of this trauma to our people and to humanity as a whole cannot be understated. Modern Jewish history is very often completely consumed by the Holocaust, making it difficult for us to learn from any other aspects of the past centuries. Our vision is dimmed by the tears of our trauma, and we're unable to open our eyes to much other than the overwhelming fear from that era. Today I'd like to talk about one Jewish hero who had been consigned to the ash heap of history up until relatively recently. Because of the timing and location of his life, we were made blind to him by the horrors of Nazi Germany. He recently figured prominently in a few episodes of the TV show Transparent, an opus to the complexities of modern Jewish life. His name was Magnus Hirschfeld. Hirschfeld was a doctor, a scholar, and an activist, and particularly concerned with the segments of society that were most often rendered invisible. Born in 1868, Hirschfeld traveled the world studying gay subcultures. Rather than becoming blind in the face of the trauma inflicted upon these groups by society's taboos and punishments, he only became more tenacious, discovering that his gay medical patients were committing suicide at a rate much higher than others. This sad statistic, which still holds true today, led to his life work focusing on lobbying for gay and transgender rights in Germany. He gathered the signatures of the likes of Martin Buber, Albert Einstein, Hermann Hesse, and 5,000 others to petition the German government to overturn the criminalization of homosexuality in Germany. He advocated for the recognition of non-binary gender and researched the spectrums of sexuality and gender decades before anyone else. Perhaps his Judaism informed his stance. After all, classic rabbinic texts speak of at least 6 different gender identities. In my estimation, Hirschfeld possessed Nachmanides' gift of uncovering the eyes. He was able to see the garment that highlighted the hidden, that removed the dimming tears of fear and trauma, and gave him the capacity to look past societal taboos and to see real people in need. His Institute of Sexual Research, established in Berlin in 1919, not only became the single outpost of investigation into non-heterosexual, non-cisgendered identity and experience, it also functioned as a home for those individuals who've been cast out due to their non-normative identities. Rather than having his eyes dimmed by trauma and fear, he, like Abraham, was able to see the true humanity of those before him, and, like Abraham, provide them with hospitality and comfort when no one else would. Unfortunately, the political atmosphere that allowed for Hirschfeld's work disappeared as the Nazis rose to power. They stormed and shattered his institute. They burned his books. Hirschfeld fled to France, where he remained in exile until his death in 1936. Many of the people he was trying to protect ended up in concentration camps alongside our ancestors. Like so much else, the towering presence of the Nazis has blinded us to Hirschfeld as the modern Jewish prophet that he was. The trauma that still resonates from the Nazis' horrible violence towards our people and institutions make it so difficult sometimes to see Nachmanides' garment present during that era. But as we continue to move into the future and to heal, the tears that have dimmed our eyes for generations, just as they dimmed Isaac's, can begin to clear. We will never forget the horrors of Nazi Germany, but we are also able to see those people, institutions, and ideas that have been hidden in the darkness of that time. In our day and age, we cannot forget the work that Magnus Hirschfeld did. As our own government seeks to overturn the work our society has done to make transgender people visible and to provide them with the rights they deserve as humans, we must look to Hirschfeld and his prophetic vision as a guide. Rather than be blinded by the tears of the weeping angels mourning the traumas of the past, we must begin our road to recovery, like Abraham under the terebinths of Mamre, and see clearly that which is before us, to open our eyes to the garment of humanity worn by people of all shapes, sizes, colors, and genders. May the vision and courage of Magnus Hirschfeld empower us all to bring about a more just, loving, and open world. Shabbat Shalom.